this audio, I want to talk about empathic abilities as a superpower. And I know I've alluded to this in other videos and some of the content I've talked about on the forum, but in this video, I want to go a little bit deeper about why I think that and how I've been experimenting with this concept and why empaths, I think in particular, have an amazing ability to manifest very quickly and to bring about rapid change in their life. First of all, I just want to apologize that this audio is late. I had recorded this yesterday, and I don't know what was going on, but for some reason the YouTube wasn't accepting the file format, even though it's the same one that I always use. And so, anyway, it was just, I kept trying over and over to do it, and I couldn't do it. So this is my second attempt, and hopefully you're listening to this right now, which means that it worked. Anyway, so what I want to talk about is, well, first of all, let me just give an overview of why I started with where I started in terms of how important it is for an empath to not only be in touch with what they're feeling, but clear and transmute and heal themselves on a daily basis, sometimes on a moment-to-moment basis. Because if we're constantly picking up on energy around us because we're quantumly entangled with everybody and we just happen to have really heightened sensors, then we constantly need to do cleanup on us, or it can obviously cause blockages, imbalances, make us feel sort of out of touch with ourselves, low self-esteem, health issues, weight gain, all of that. So hopefully it's clear by now why I have just stressed and emphasized over and over and over how important it is to heal yourself, to heal and cleanse and clear energy within you at all times. And especially learning to get to that point where we no longer identify with the emotions around us, even our own. We identify them, we identify what they are, but we don't identify with them. We don't claim them as our identity because we understand at this point that emotionality is part of how we function, is part of how our soul chose to come in and expand. And we knew it would be rapid expansion, but we also knew it would be more difficult and we'd be processing more than the average person. So it's something that we chose. It's not better or worse. Sometimes it feels a lot worse, but here's what I want to talk about, why I think this can be an amazingly huge benefit. When we've gone to the point where we've become skilled empaths, in other words, we're able to clear ourselves and identify all the things I just talked about, we can start really choosing what grids we want to hang out in. And that's really what your superpower is all about. It's about grids. Now, usually when you have a lot of unhealed emotional wounds within you, you will default sort of at a frequency where you are constantly picking up other people who are also unhealed and wounded. Sometimes they may be a lot more wounded than you because you have the need to be if you have a need to be a helper or a rescuer, then you are going to attract people who need to be helped, who need to be rescued. It's just the way the law of attraction works. And like I've mentioned before, we kind of inadvertently heal parts of ourselves as we do that because it's things that we need. But what happens is when we're unhealed, we just sort of naturally default into always tuning into these frequencies that we're used to hanging out in, which is a lot of times stressful, pain, grief, all of those things that people go through. We are just naturally, unconsciously hanging out in those grids all the time. Once we learn how to clear that and to really elevate our frequency and our mood and just our own being, we can start consciously choosing what grids we want to hang out in. And because of that, we can kind of become amazing shapeshifters because we can say, oh, I want to experience this. And then find people who have that, hang out in those grids, experience it, and then come out of it. And we can use it to help us change our lives in amazing ways that we need. And so I want to use a couple examples in my own life of things that I've done in this way. One of them has to do with my weight. And this is a few years ago. It was about 3.5 years ago. It was after I had just gotten out of a really painful relationship. One of the most painful it was the most painful relationship I've ever been in. Extremely codependent. It was really the first time I learned how extreme my codependent tendencies were. I had no idea because I was completely unhealed and unskilled as an empath. So I just thought I was helping this person, and then it ended up turning into a relationship, and then it ended up turning into a relationship in which my value was out of how much this person needed me. And my whole value was that. My whole sense of self was, this person needs me. This person can't live without me. I am everything to this person. Well, then this person gets better, and all of a sudden I mean nothing to them. And it was really quite a huge blow to my ego and to my sense of self-worth and all of those things. And at that time, and I've mentioned before that I'll go through a lot of weight changes in my life. Sometimes I'll be really thin, other times I'll put on weight, and usually when I feel vulnerable, it's when I'll start putting on weight. So at the tail end of this relationship, I started putting on a little bit of weight, and I had probably about 15 extra pounds on me. And I just felt awful about myself. And when I came out of that relationship, there's two things that happened. One, a friend said something to me that changed the whole way I viewed my empathic abilities. At that time, I wouldn't have even called them empathic abilities. I knew I was really sensitive. But I looked at it as a really negative thing, and partly because a lot of people had always told me that, oh, you're so sensitive, and like it's a bad thing. And this relationship in particular, this person would always say that to me. Anytime that they did something that would really hurt me and I would say something about it, they would just say, oh, you're just too sensitive. You're just really sensitive. So I learned to believe that it was just a bad thing. And I was talking to a friend of mine, a really good friend who had been with me through all of the trauma of this tumultuous relationship. And I was talking about myself kind of in a negative way. And I said, it's my fault though, because I'm just so sensitive and I need to learn how to quit being so sensitive. And she stopped me and she said, Amanda, she's like, your sensitivity is one of the most beautiful things about you. It's one of the things I love most about you. And don't you ever talk about that like it's a negative thing. It's one of your gifts. And that was the first time that anyone had really ever said that to me. And it was the first time I looked at it in that way. And I was like, wow. And it started me on this path of really thinking, how can this be a good thing rather than a bad thing? And at that time, I felt really bad about myself. Like I said, I was just sort of at the lowest I'd ever been in terms of how I felt about myself. I felt completely worthless. So I remember thinking, okay, I need this extra 15 pounds off of me. I want to just have a new start. I want to feel different. I want to feel better. So I said to myself, I wonder what it would be like, because I was exercising, I was eating healthy, as I typically always do. I do emotionally eat, and that's something that I do on and off, but overall, I have always been quite healthy. So I said to myself, I always have friends. My whole life had, pretty much every friend that I have has always been really skinny and never dealt with weight, never had weight be an issue for them at all, which I'm a natural match to because I always wanted that, but I had resistance to it. So I was attracting people in my life that had that, which also happens a lot. And you'll notice you will often attract people that have things that you want, but you have a block, so you can't quite access it for yourself. So I decided I remember saying to myself, I'm just going to explore what that feels like. Like, I'm really good at feeling what people feel. I'm just going to enter into their, experience. And at that time, I didn't have the vocabulary, I'm going to explore their grids or enter into their auric field. I just thought, I'm going to feel them out, and I'm going to have my brain memorize what it feels like to not have to worry about weight and see if that changes anything. And so I did that. I started doing it regularly. Every morning I would wake up and I would feel these people out and imagine what it felt like to be them in the morning. And imagine what it felt like to not have body image in any way, or let me not say body image, weight, being overweight in any way be a part of my conscience. And I lost 25 pounds in about 2 months. It was the fastest I'd ever lost weight. Yes, I was exercising, and yes, I was eating healthy, but I was already doing that before, so it wasn't anything different. The only thing different I did was enter into their auric field every day, into their grids, into the experience of what would it feel like to be able to lose weight and not have an extra weight on me and not have it even be in my consciousness. Well, what happened was, because I had unhealed wounds in me regarding my self-worth, all of a sudden I was getting all this attention. Well, first of all, a lot of people were like, what happened? Why are you so skinny? Some people were worried about me, because I lost more weight than I actually had intended to. And people were worried about me. But also I just started getting a lot more attention than I normally had. And that was partly because I was more outgoing at the same time as well. So But I was receiving so much attention, and again, I'm so sensitive, that I felt extremely vulnerable. So I was unhealed and didn't realize the reason my body had the extra weight to begin with, because I was protecting myself. And all of a sudden I was exposed to it in kind of an abrupt, quick way. I mean, two months is pretty quick to lose that much weight. And I just felt really overwhelmed, and I started struggling with my own sense of body image. Like, I felt actually more uncomfortable and more self-conscious than I ever had in my entire life. Like, I genuinely felt like I just didn't want anyone to look at me. I was feeling so vulnerable. And I remember also realizing that I had picked up on my friends, these two particular girls that I was kind of hanging out in their auric field all the time. I was picking up on their issues, partly, which their issue wasn't necessarily such a low self-esteem that I had, but it was they got their sense of worth from their body. So I sort of developed this sort of body dysmorphia, and I became obsessed with I had to look good, and I was terrified to lose weight, which caused all these problems. And actually, I've developed hypothyroidism, and I have a feeling, because I didn't have hypothyroidism before that happened, although I probably had symptoms of it because of not being able to lose weight. But I remember consciously and subconsciously, really, when looking back, I just chose, okay, I've got to put weight back on because this is too vulnerable for me. And so that's what I did, just kind of slowly started gaining weight again. And I've been in that place for a while, and I've had to do, this last year for me has really been a time of self-healing, of really self-soothing and self-healing, and learning to really love myself no matter what my body looks like. And I can honestly say that at this point in my life, I'm happier with myself and with my body than I've ever been, even though I still could lose probably 10 pounds. I'm at that same point, 10 to 15 pounds. I'm at that same point I was. But the weight is starting to come off, just even within the last couple of weeks, the weight has started to come off again. But this time it feels so different because I'm doing it consciously, and I'm doing it with awareness, and I'm doing it understanding what my issues are deep within. I'm understanding where it's coming from. So that's a perfect example of how we can change really rapidly, or how we can go in and out of experiences. But it's an example of how, when you're not healed and you're an unskilled empath, how it can just cause a whole other set of problems. Again, so going back to why I think it's so important to always go within and check in with how you're feeling and clear your energy and understand where your wounds are coming from. But doing this is also a perfect opportunity to see where your blockages are. So let me give you one more example of me doing this. For a long time, well, my whole life I've loved to travel, and I hate office jobs, and I'm just not a 9-to-5 person. Like, I'm a creative person. I like having a creative flow. I like having my own creative flow with my work. And I always would say I want to have a job where I can travel and I can work for myself. I have my own company. My own business. I don't want to work for somebody else. But it seemed so outside of my realm. And so eventually I thought, and this was just within the last couple years, year and a half about, I've said, well, I'm just going to explore people who I attracted friends in my life who were doing exactly what I wanted to do in terms of traveling and working for themselves. And I thought, I'm going to explore their grids and hang out in them. And sure enough, within 6 months, I now work entirely for myself. I'm a freelance writer. I travel a lot. I'm still traveling. I'll be traveling a ton this year. And I sort of quickly manifested that into my life. Now, this is just the art of manifesting, but what I'm trying to get at here is that empaths have an ability to do it really, really, really well if we allowed ourselves, because we are